Hey guys, Brian Sullivan, founder of Precise Selling with your weekly video tip. Now, this week we're going to talk about how you need to be better prepared to talk to the animals. By animals, I mean prospects and clients. All right, stay with me on this one. It was several years ago I was making a sales call with one of my reps. I was a manager at a medical company. And the prospect this day that we were calling in, we had a big demo set up, was what you might call a jerk. The guy had no interest in our products or service, and frankly, I believe he called us into his office just to blow off a little steam on some salespeople. And he did. As we walked out of the office, I'll never forget it, my rep and buddy looked at me and he said, "Man, that guy was an animal." Of course, I paused for a moment and I thought about what the guy just said. See, my wife says I have a sickness. That sickness is I'm always looking for some learning lesson. I thought, animal? So being a great manager, I said, "So what type of animal do you think he is?" Of course, he said, "How about a jackass?" Now, we made several more sales calls that day. And while it was medical office buildings that we were going into, you would have thought we were calling on the Omaha Zoo because every time we got into the car after a call, we would identify our last customer as a very specific animal. Of course, that day we had conversations with the jackass, the snake, the pussycat, the rat, the goat, the sheep, the fox, the bear, and a few insects in there. I think I saw some roaches. But thinking of the calls that we made that day, it would have been nice for us to know what type of animal my rep and I would be meeting with before we ever walked in the door. We should have prepared better. And of course, these days with tools like LinkedIn, we can get a pretty good sense of what type of animal we're about to pick up the phone and call or going into a meeting or demonstration with. You see, this type of preparation would have changed our mindset and prepared us for how we should have acted and responded to the actions of the particular animal we're meeting with. Now, with so many different personality types, it's important that we as salespeople change how we look, how we act, and how we talk, depending on the animal that we are presenting. Now, does it mean we need to become the animal that we were selling to if they're really, really jerky? No, it doesn't. But it's important to be aware. In the first 15 seconds, if it's a cold call, I want you to take note of the tone of their voice and their attitude. Same thing in a meeting, be it virtual or live. Don't take too long to transform yourself from salesperson to animal. And this change needs to occur almost immediately as this prospect either walks through the door and or finishes his or her sentence over the phone. Otherwise, you're going to risk losing the ability to get your message across because the defenses of that animal will be way up. Now, I mentioned that it's important to try to match this animal that you are selling to. But you may say to me, "Hey, Sully, what if the prospect is, in fact, a jackass?" Well, this is one animal, of course, that I don't encourage you to be like when you're in front of him or her or on the phone speaking to them. And while the rule of thumb in selling to personalities, different personalities, is try to assimilate the customer, I don't encourage you to try to out-jackass the jackass. I do encourage you to be patient with him. You see, that jackass customer, had a tough day in the barn and maybe looks at you as like a little fly buzzing around their eyeballs. Of course, the jackass usually talks quickly. Take note of that. They like to get to the point. They hate the crap that they're standing in. They're often having a miserable day in the barn. So if you have any hope of turning the jackass into a stallion, you got to speed up your speech. Be precise. Get to the point and not add to the crap that they're standing in. Convince him that you have a shovel and a fly swatter and that you're the rep that can turn his barn into a better place. Now, there's other types of animals. There's the snake. The snake. Now, if you want the snake to respect you, this is that prospect. You've got to look them in the eye, be very direct on the phone. You cannot flinch. You got to wipe off that smile. You may be having the greatest day on the planet. You walk in that door and you see that face. You got to tone that thing down. You got to put on your game face. Be as precise as possible. Now, the snake may never like you, but she might just respect you if you match their personality. Of course, then you got the fox. I love the fox. Fox is usually a great prospect if you're a great sales rep. Now, the fox rarely gets tripped up. They do their homework, great at preparation. And they're looking for other foxes like you to help them find solutions to the problem. They're good at figuring stuff out. They're looking for partners. But when working with the fox, you better be prepared, because this person has places to go, people to see, and gets bored easily with the turtle who's too slow at getting them the information on follow-up. Now, there's a lot more animals that we could discuss today, but rather than hear more from me, do me a favor today. I want you to take a minute to comment below and let me know a type of animal that you have called on. Then let me know what you think the best way is to approach them and how you should act so we keep the walls down. So, it was great seeing you this week. Hope to see you next week for your precise selling tip.